Hello our dear viewers, you're once again welcome to our channel Health Tips and Tricks, and this is where we give you all the tricks and tips to help you live a healthy lifestyle and avoid any diseases which will come and maybe rid you of your loved ones or even yourself of your good health. I am Dr. Andrew, your physician as usual, and today I'm going to be talking about something which is perhaps becoming more common in our settings, and this is what we call stroke. Before I dive in, previously we have been talking about high blood pressure, we have been talking about heart disease in some of our videos, and if you missed out, feel free to go to our page and download our videos and catch up with your health and learning from some of these things. So if you like our video, please subscribe below and give us a like, and also share with your friends so that they can also get to learn more about their health. Today, without further ado, I will go straight to our viewer, Patrick from Kampala, Uganda, and this is what he says. Our neighbor in the village called me last morning that my mother was unable to talk and she could also not sit or stand. Her right leg was very weak and heavy. However, she had slept well. He says, "Doctor, I am so worried. Please, what could be the problem with my mother? And why her? Because she's just 51 years old and she has not been sick at all. However, she has been taking her pressure drugs and doing well. What could be the solution to this? What are the chances of her getting well and sitting and standing and also talking again? Am I also at risk of becoming like her when I reach at that age?" So these are the concerns of our viewer Patrick, and after this talk, hopefully he will be able to learn more about the condition and also help her mother in one way or another. So without further ado, I will talk about something we call stroke. What is stroke? I know some of you have heard of this word before. Maybe some of you have not heard of it. But there is something we call stroke, which is a disease affecting now quite a number of people. Some we live with them, some are our relatives, some are even our friends. So what is the meaning of this thing called stroke, and what does it affect in the body? So to begin with, I will draw a simple illustration. But before that, I want to again remind you, our body is made up of what we call organs, and these organs are what help us to function and to do our daily activities. In our previous videos, we talked about the heart, we talked about blood vessels, and now when we are talking about stroke, what we are talking about is an organ called the brain. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the brain. The brain is the organ which is found in your head, which helps you to do things like thinking. It helps you to have behavior. It helps you to have language, to have emotions. It helps you to sense your environment, to be aware of your environment, and also it helps you to perform every action of your body. And on top of that, the brain also has control over most of the organs in your body. So as you can see, the brain is another very important organ in your body, which almost also, like the heart, without it, the body cannot function. Because this is the brain, it gives you awareness. The brain is what keeps you awake. You ask yourself, a person, for me to be alive, what do I need? One of the things you need is, one, to be what we call alert, or what we call conscious, and also to be aware of your surrounding. And the brain is what does this for us. You are awake, you are alert because your brain is there, and you are aware of your environment because your brain is working. So, what has this brain got to do with stroke? Again, I will begin the same way. With an illustration. I will begin with an illustration. So we are going to draw a diagram of the brain. Like any other organ in the body, the brain also needs blood to function, it needs oxygen, and it needs nutrients, which come from the food we eat. So here we have the brain. That is the brain. So the brain, in order for it to function well, like we have said, it also needs to get blood. It needs to get oxygen. It needs to get nutrients. And how do these things reach the blood? They reach the blood through blood vessels, which we have already talked about in our previous videos. So blood vessels bring in blood. So blood vessels, I will use the red marker for the blood vessels. So they come and bring blood to the brain, to different parts of the brain. This part, that part, there, and these other parts. So we are going to assume that this is a blood vessel which is bringing blood to the brain. So when you say someone has a stroke, what has happened? So when we say someone has a stroke simply means that a certain part of the brain is being damaged. And why is it being damaged? Because that part is either not getting enough blood, or the blood vessel which brings blood to that part has been damaged. These are some of the things which can what? Which can cause that part of the brain to be damaged, and you get what we call a stroke. I'll give an example. For example, if this blood vessel which is bringing blood to this part of the brain gets damaged, and it can be damaged by different things, as we shall talk about, then this part is no longer getting blood, and this part will become damaged. Now, when that part of the brain becomes damaged, what happens? So, every part we see here on the brain, every part we see which I've drawn, has a function it does. For example, you'll find the middle part here maybe is the part which enables you to move your arms and legs. Maybe this part here is the part which enables you to see. Maybe the part here is the part which enables you to hear. This part in front, maybe it is the part which helps you to think, to speak, to have language, to maybe go to the toilet. That is the part. So every part of the brain controls something. This part here, you find it helps you to balance as you're walking. This part here, you find it controls your breathing. It controls your heartbeat. So every part of the brain has a function it does on the body. So when these different parts get damaged, it means you would not be able to do what you do using these different parts of the brain. Giving an example of the mother of our viewer, Patrick. She developed a weakness in the right leg, and the right leg also became heavy. So what does that mean? It means the part of the brain which is supposed to control the right leg, this is our right leg, which is supposed to make the right leg move, has become affected, and the right leg is unable to move. So how does the brain control these parts? So the brain controls all these parts through things we call nerves. So the nerves will move from the brain and then come to the different body parts, to the arms, to the legs, to the body. So if the part of the brain is damaged, then it means these parts of the bodies will not be able to do what they are supposed to do. And that's what we call a stroke. So, what can cause damage to these different parts of the brain? Like I said, the blood vessel is bringing nutrients. It is bringing oxygen. It is bringing blood. And these are things which the brain needs to function. So if these things are missing, the brain won't be able to function. And the different parts it controls will also not function. So, how does this happen? How does blood fail to reach these parts of the brain and cause damage? In other words, what we call stroke. And if we remember with the heart, it was the same thing. Blood was not reaching a certain part of the heart and the heart became damaged. Now we are talking about the brain and it's almost the same thing. So a stroke is like a heart attack of the brain, in simple language, if we understood the concept of heart attack from our previous video. So I will draw another illustration and show you the blood vessel and what happens to it to cause what we call a stroke, like what happened in our viewer Patrick's mother. Here we have the brain. I'm going to draw a bigger image of the brain. Here we have the heart. Now the heart is bringing blood to the brain. We can take, for example, this part of the brain. The heart is bringing blood there. So the heart is bringing blood through a blood vessel. This is the blood vessel. Now, many things can happen to this blood vessel. Many things can happen to this blood vessel. One, what can happen? This blood vessel can also get blocked. It can also get blocked. We are going to talk about some of the things which can cause the blood vessel to get blocked. So this blood vessel can get blocked. Once it gets blocked, blood is no longer reaching the brain, this part of the brain. So when blood is not reaching, this part becomes damaged, and whatever part it controls will not be functional. So this is one of the things which will make you get a stroke. Number 2. Let's see, what else can make you get a stroke? So that's 1. 2, maybe the blood vessel is working, but something happens and the wall of the blood vessel here becomes damaged, and then it bursts or it ruptures, and then blood, instead of going to here, it now spills out and pours into the brain. So when this happens and blood spills out, then blood is not reaching where it is supposed to go. This will also make you get a stroke. Okay? So we have seen 2 things which can make you get a stroke. 1, your blood vessels get blocked by different things, which we shall talk about, and the blood is not reaching the part of the brain, and then that part of the brain gets damaged, it dies, and the function it's supposed to do, maybe move an arm, move a leg, no longer functions. Or the blood vessel ruptures, it bursts, and blood pours in the brain. And the part where the blood is supposed to go will also become damaged. And that damage will also make you get a stroke. So, that's what happens to say that someone has got a stroke. Those are the 2 things which can happen in your brain and give you what we call a stroke. So, when this happens, then what next? But before we go to that, let's first see what are some of the things that can cause these 2 things. We shall begin with number 1. Your blood vessels get blocked. What can make my blood vessels get blocked and give me a stroke? And still we shall go back to some of the things we have been talking about previously. 1, the kind of diet, our diet. If you eat a lot of animal diet, animal products with fat, and which is mostly animal fat, and processed foods, so all these will cause what we call bad fat in the body. So bad fat will also build up in the blood vessel. Just like we said in heart attack, bad fat will build up. When it builds up, it causes blockage of the blood vessel, and thus blood is not reaching your brain, and you get a heart attack. That's what we call the bad fat. So it is one of the causes of a stroke. 2, we can have something we call clot formation. Clots. What are clots? Clots, blood is supposed to move in the blood vessels. It's supposed to move and go to the different parts of the body. But sometimes something can happen and that blood causes what we call a clot. The blood becomes solid and it is no longer liquid and flowing, but it becomes solid and it forms what we call a clot. So this clot is like, for example, when you cut yourself, or when you get an accident and you bleed out. And after some time, you see something red forming, something red which is like a tissue, which is like a solid forming around the area where you've cut yourself. That is what we call a clot. So sometimes these clots can form inside the body in the blood vessels. We go back to our diagram. So when that happens, what will happen? So maybe the heart is pushing blood. But maybe you get something here, then you form a clot. A clot. This is the clot. A solid thing. And the clot moves because blood will push it. And the clot comes and gets stuck here. So when the clot gets stuck here, it means blood can no longer reach this part of the brain. And if blood can't reach this part of the brain, it means that part of the brain will die, and hence you get a stroke. So that's another thing which can cause a stroke there. That's another thing. So then too, we talked about the blood vessel bursts, or the blood vessel ruptures and blood pours. What can cause a blood vessel to rupture or to burst? The most common cause of blood vessels rupturing or bursting is what we call high blood pressure. So what is high blood pressure? So high blood pressure is what happens when you have your blood vessel. We talked about it briefly. You have your blood vessel going to the brain. But maybe somehow the pressure of blood inside your blood vessel here increases. It becomes a lot. So when the pressure becomes high, in case you missed our video of high blood pressure, you can go to our channel and watch it to catch up. So when blood pressure becomes high here, it means there is a lot of pressure, a lot of force, which is being pushed to the brain. Now, when this pressure being pushed to the brain is high, there are some blood vessels in the brain which are I would say, fragile. Fragile, but we can also use the word soft. They are soft and fragile. In other words, they can easily burst or rupture. So if this big blood vessel comes, then there's a smaller blood vessel coming off. There's a smaller blood vessel coming off. And another small blood vessel coming off here. And these small blood vessels, they are soft and they are fragile. In other words, they can easily rupture. So when blood comes and the blood is at a high pressure, it will squeeze through this and will cause that blood vessel to rupture, to burst. And when this blood vessel bursts, the blood will come and it pours in the brain tissue. And this will give you a stroke. So high blood pressure is one of the things that can cause the blood vessels to burst and rupture and thus give you a stroke. So which other diseases can affect blood vessels? We have diseases like diabetes. Some of you know disease called diabetes where your blood sugar becomes high. Diabetes is another disease which can cause these blood vessels to become damaged and maybe even form small clots which block these blood vessels and affect the blood going to the brain and lead to a stroke. All right. Having mentioned that, we have seen some of the causes of a high blood pressure. We have seen some of the causes of stroke, and we have seen that either your brain is not getting enough blood supply and oxygen because the blood vessel is blocked. We have seen that it can be blocked by a clot. It can also be blocked by buildup of fats, which are bad, which we eat from our diet, mostly animal diet. And we have also seen that certain diseases can destroy blood vessels, like, for example, high blood pressure, for example, diabetes, or high blood sugar. And these, once the blood vessels become damaged, they can easily form clots or even burst or rupture. And when this happens, our brain will become damaged because it is not getting enough blood and oxygen, and thus we get a stroke. So, having talked about some of the ways in which we can get a stroke, we now look at some of the things which happen in our life which can increase the risk of us getting a stroke. Again, these will also almost in line with what we have just spoken about. For example, if you are eating a lot of animal fat, this will build up and give you a stroke in the blood vessels. Number 2, smoking comes back. An unhealthy lifestyle. You don't do exercise. So all these, again, the same risk factors come back. And also we have an element of genetics. Then, of course, if you have other diseases like diabetes or high blood sugar, and also if you have high blood pressure, that one will also increase your risk of getting a stroke. And then we have, of course, age. As you grow, like we said in our previous videos, your blood vessels also grow old. When they grow old, they become friable. Friable means soft and fragile, and they can easily burst and give you a stroke. They can easily form clots and give you a stroke. So all these factors can make us have a higher risk of getting a stroke. So when you get a stroke, what are some of the signs? So just like our example which we have above, when you get a stroke, like we said, the part of the brain which gets damaged will cause the part of the body which it supports to stop functioning. For example, you will start feeling maybe weakness in your arms, in your legs. You start feeling some bit of numbness. Sometimes you can get a headache because the brain is up here. Sometimes you get a headache. So some of these signs are like warning signs, or sometimes things that the stroke has probably already happened. And people with a stroke will present with weakness on one side, weakness in one leg, maybe the face. Your neighbors, friends, and relatives notice that your mouth has pointed to one side, it is deviating. Maybe you can't open your eye properly on one side. So all these are signs which show that possibly someone has a stroke. And in very severe cases, you could even become unconscious, and because of a stroke in severe cases. So these are some of the things we can see. For example, we had someone developed weakness in the right leg, and the right leg also became heavy, was unable to sit and even stand on their own. So these are signs that the stroke has already happened. So when the stroke happens, what next? So that brings me to how will you see your doctor and what will your doctor do? So a patient who has got a stroke is a patient who is supposed to be taken to see the doctor or to see the physician. And when you reach the doctor, what are they going to do? They are going to start you on treatment. So what will the treatment do? One, we want to remove what is causing the stroke. If, for example, it is high blood pressure, we want to normalize the blood pressure. If it is high blood sugar, we want to treat the high blood sugar. If it is a clot, we want to treat the clot. We want to make your blood move smoothly without clots. If it is your diet and you have a lot of fat in your diet, we want to give you a drug which will reduce your fat so that you have less fat in your blood vessels, and your blood vessels can move blood around much more easily. And then, of course, we don't forget the lifestyle modifications. We teach you about exercise, doing exercises, avoiding smoking and other unhealthy lifestyles. And also the kind of diet. We want you to reduce fat in your diet and take in more of plant and vegetarian diet, which is mostly fat-free, or it is free from the fat that is bad, the bad fat, which can increase our risk of getting a stroke. But someone will ask, okay, but if the stroke has already happened, then why now change my diet? I mean, I already have the damage. So, yes, that is true. You already have the damage. But you see, if you don't remove what is causing the damage, then the damage will continue, and it can even worsen. Some people get a stroke, and when the cause of the stroke is not removed, they can easily get another stroke. And of course, when you get another stroke, that is more brain damage, which is not good. So, and that's why once a patient has got a stroke, we need to still initiate this treatment so that they don't get another stroke. Now that brings me to another point. So the stroke which has already happened, it has caused damage. So am I going to recover from this damage? Is my arm going to move again? Is my leg going to move again? Am I going to be able to speak again? Yes. So coming to that, we shall say all this depends on the extent of the damage and also whether the cause of the damage has been removed or not. For example, if you have, we shall go back to the brain. If this is your brain and you get a stroke, and the stroke affects a big part of your brain, maybe it affects the whole of this part, and you have a stroke affecting all this part. So whichever function this part of the brain is doing will become affected. Maybe it was moving your legs, your arms, and helping you to move around. Then you will no longer be able to walk on your own, you will no longer be able to sit. But then, what next? So one, we want to remove what has caused this damage. We remove that. Then after removing that, say, okay, what can we do about the damage that has already been done? Now, all this depends on many things. Some of the common things which affect this are, number one, when did you come to the hospital? After the stroke, did you come early or did you come late? If you come early to the hospital, there are some things that can be done and the damage may even be reversed. For example, coming early to the hospital within the first hours, then we could do something. For example, if you have got the stroke because there is a clot in your blood vessel, the blood vessel bringing the blood has a clot, and the clot has blocked off this, and you come early within the first hours, actually to be more precise, within the first 4.5 hours, then the doctors can do something. They use what we call wires. The wires are put in the blood vessel and they will come and remove this clot. And once the clot is removed with a wire, your blood vessel opens up and your brain gets blood again. And when your brain gets blood again, the damage is restored back to normal gradually, and you can recover your function. But then you will ask, but what if my patient comes late? So some patients, of course, they come late. The stroke happens today, patient comes to the hospital after 2 days, after 3 days. So if that happens, then there we just have to start you on drugs to prevent you from getting another stroke. And then what else can we do? This is another thing we can do. And I'll first explain the basis. So, for example, you have a stroke. The stroke has affected this part of your brain. Maybe this part of your brain was responsible for moving the right leg. It was responsible for moving the right leg. So, if you get a stroke and this part of the brain becomes damaged, now this depends on your age. So the younger you are, we have something called plasticity of the brain. What does this mean? It sort of means flexibility. For example, if you have a family and you have 5 children, and maybe these children have different work they do. Maybe one child cleans the house, another one cooks food, another one washes clothes, and another one maybe looks after the children. So if one child maybe goes away and is no longer there, what will happen to the work they were doing? The other children will start doing the work they were doing. Now that is what we call plasticity or flexibility. One person is missing, the other people do his or her duties. The same applies to the brain. The brain has also something we call plasticity, flexibility. So if this part becomes damaged, some of these other parts of the brain are able to modify and start doing the activities which were being done by this part of the body. But this is not automatic. So with physiotherapy, some of these parts of the brain will learn how to do the activities that were being done by the part that was damaged. So that brings me to the treatment of physiotherapy, which is a very important treatment for all stroke patients. A stroke patient is supposed to get physiotherapy, and with effective physiotherapy, a significant number of patients recover their function. It may not be recovered fully, but they will recover their function. Why? Because of what we talked about, the plasticity of the brain. So we have now briefly seen how a stroke comes about, what are some of the risk factors, when it happens, what will the patient be having, and when you go to the hospital, what will be done. We have seen that if you come early, some of the causes can be removed and you can recover your function. And if you come late, which happens for most of our patients, then you can have also some treatments done. One, to prevent another stroke from happening, to treat the cause of the stroke, and also physiotherapy, which will help you to recover your function gradually. So that brings me to the final part, which was saying, am I also at risk because my mother got the stroke? So like we said, most of these strokes, it depends on the cause of the stroke. So if in your family you have a history of high blood pressure, a history of diabetes, it means probably you also have a genetic risk of acquiring some of these diseases. And these are the diseases which will cause a stroke. So you as a person from the family, you have to constantly see your physician so that you have tests done to make sure that you are not contracting or you don't already have any of these diseases. And if they're already there, then you should be on proper treatment so that you reduce your risk of getting a stroke. So in summary, we have here a classical example of a person who developed weakness on the right leg and was able to sit or stand on their own. And we said this is classical of what we call a stroke, which just happened at 51 years old. And again, like we said, it doesn't matter what age you are, as long as you have the risk factors or the causes we have talked about, then you can get a stroke. Even a young person of 20 years can get a stroke if they have a certain risk factor or a cause. For example, high blood pressure. So in summary, I have talked about stroke, and I have seen I've talked about how it can present, some of the causes and some of the things which can make us get a stroke. We have been able to understand what a stroke is, and when you get it and go to the doctor or to see your physician, what will they do for you and what will happen after that? Will functionality return? And we have been able to address some of these in summary. So if you have any more questions and comments, please feel free to write them down below in the section below, and we shall address them as they come in. And don't forget to subscribe or to like our channel and share with your friends so that they can also learn about their health. If you want to make an appointment, please feel free to contact us on our email in the section below. I remain your physician, Dr. Andrew, here to serve you.